Hey, everybody. Welcome back to this episode of Think Business Live. I'm looking forward to talking to Stephen Ingber, Chief Operating Officer, started at the Jewish, hold on, I'm just getting a little echo. Started off as a Chief Operating Officer in 2016 at Jewish Federation, and on May 6, 2021, he was named Chief Executive Officer. Prior to joining the Jewish Federation, he was an entrepreneur who owned and operated an automotive wholesale distribution business in the Metro Detroit area, and went and graduated from the business school at University of Michigan. Stephen, welcome to the show. I appreciate you. I may put you on mute a little bit just because it's a little feedback, but welcome to the show. I appreciate you being here. I'd love to start off how, going from having, in business to the business of nonprofit is a little bit of a leap. And so what was that? Talk a little bit about that transition and what drew you to this position.
Sure. First of all, John, thanks for having me. I think it's a real interesting question. And basically, if you would ask Steve Ingber of 5 years ago or 10 years ago, I would have said, no, I'm an entrepreneur at heart. Yeah. I'm in for the almighty dollar. And that's what I'm at. Yeah. I will tell you, it's been a great change. I'm thrilled to be here. And what I've tried to do is sort of instill the business principles that worked in the for-profit world and bring them over into the non-for-profit world. And we try and run this federation as close to a business as possible, full well knowing almost everything we do sort of loses money. We're in the business for helping people. Yeah. But how can we do that as effectively as possible? And that's something that, nonprofits around the world have really been slow to catch up on that philosophy. You can still do good and not lose a ton of money.
Yeah. Well, let's dive into that for a minute, because I think, I'm involved in nonprofits. I interview a lot of nonprofits on the show. And I think one of the things that is very common is that nonprofits don't think like a business, but they want to think more like a business. They just don't know how to kind of transition and what that bridge is. Right. So what are some of the things, what are like maybe the top 2 or 3 things that you brought over from the business world that you started implementing that other nonprofits can say, oh yeah, that sounds so simple. It's complicated, but it really is simpler than I thought.
Yeah. And I hate to downplay my education, but it is simpler than you think. I think people overthink it a lot. What people need to realize is that you can do good and not and still have business principles. You need to be careful of your overhead. We are in a world right now where information is key. Donors want to know, if I'm giving you the money, what is it being used for? And it's readily accessible. You can go on Charity Navigator or any other reporting and see what we're doing. And people are using that. It's not just, you're raising money for X and I believe in X, here's money. They want to know, okay, are you using my dollars correctly, and are you using them wisely, and will they be spread out as best they can? And that's why, one of the first things I did when I started here was I insisted that the first thing we do is be listed as a Charity Navigator. We were not listed up until I came on board, and I'm glad to say that we have the highest 4-star ranking, and we are a tremendous nonprofit. If you look at us roughly, and it varies from year to year, but the last year, roughly 12 cents of every dollar was spent on overhead, and the rest 88 cents went direct to care services.
Oh, wow, that's great.
Yeah. Now, there's 2 ways to look at it. You could look at it as, that's great, John, and you're right. If you compare us to other nonprofits, it's a phenomenal number. And you'll still get some people who say, well, 12 cents, why don't I just give directly to, this cause? And what I'll remind people is that there is overhead to running a nonprofit. There is, there are unsexy things like paper towel and toilet paper and lights and, and people. Yeah. People always say, well, why don't you lower your budget? I could lower the budget. If the community said, we want to lower the budget by $2 million, we could do it, but we're not going to provide the excellent services that we're providing right now. And so the key is, when people look at this, is to find that sweet spot between what is the lowest budget we can provide or work with, and still provide all the services that we are supposed to, and make sure they are top-notch services. I could do a smaller budget and give, excuse my language, but worse services, but that's not what this is all about. This is how can we provide best services as cheaply as possible.
Yeah. I love it. Let's talk a little bit about leadership for a moment. You are the CEO of such a large organization that has so many tentacles within it. You step into a role as COO, which is a very strong leadership position, and then move to CEO, where you are not only working with people who work for Federation, but also volunteers. And so you're leading in so many different ways. What are some of the things that you brought with you and that you've learned about leadership? Because a guy like you has to be on 24/7, does it? And so part of leadership always is, it doesn't matter if you have a bad day, you got to kind of bring your best self. So
exactly.
you're a high demand guy who has to always be in that leadership space.
Yeah. So a couple of things I want to touch on. First, I think the number one characteristic of a leader is you have to be willing to do any job that you assign out. Again, sounds like a very simple thought. And I learned that from my grandfather when he taught me to sweep the floors. You can't ask anybody who works for you to do something that you're not willing to do yourself.
Yeah.
And all you have to do is do that job one time, and people respect that and say, oh, look, he's down on the trench. He's passing out food. He's delivering direct care, whatever. He's sweeping the floors. You figure it out, whatever your job is. That's leadership. And I believe it's leadership by example. That's key.
Yeah.
To pivot and go to your other point. Yes, I always have to be on, and you always have to get my A game. It's much like a doctor. A doctor can have a bad day, but when I'm his patient, or even a hairdresser, or anyone providing services,
right.
I don't want my doctor to have a bad day. I don't want my hairdresser to be like, it's just not my day. We'll try again tomorrow. We'll do a lousy job of haircut. I'm on that. And I have to, I like to say it's 24/6 because we don't work on Shabbat.
Yeah.
But I have to be available. Yes. All times. And when people call, they need my best self. I can't be like, I just don't feel like dealing with this today. I like to say I went from when I worked for myself, having one boss to having 10,000 bosses.
Yeah, right.
I think it's an overstatement, but I think it's important. It's more of a philosophy than a statement. And I need to be, whether you give $1 to our nonprofit or whether you give $2 million, I need to be able to be accessible, and I need to give you what you want when you want it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think in all business, and I love that you said that, I think accessibility is one of the most important things, especially in today's world where everything is so on demand.
Mm-hmm.
And people, people have that, they want that instant gratification of everything. Let's talk about, as we sit here live, Stephen, it's July 22nd, and we are hopefully coming out of COVID and the endemic. And there's a lot of talks on the Delta variant and things of that nature. But, giving to me has changed a lot. You talked about people who give $1 versus 2 million. I think today, if you just look at the Obama campaign, raising $5 here, $10 here, $20 here is more popular today than just going for big donors. Everybody's a donor in a way. And so what does the face of giving look like today and moving forward?
Look, I think you're spot on, John. And that's why when we report our sort of donations, we don't just report the number of dollars, we also report the number of donors. Because you want to build, we're also in community building. If you want to build a community, you need more than just your donors who are giving, large sums. And it's the way you treat your donors is everybody has to be treated equally. I'm a firm believer in that. We have to be available to all of the donors, or else it doesn't work and it becomes a federation of a few. And we've seen that in some towns that have gone and really focused on, just the elite of the elite who can give, you pick the gift, whatever you want. And then we've looked at ones who've said, no, let's talk about it as a whole community. And I think that's paramount to growth. Especially when you put, it's like putting all your eggs in one basket. If you say, oh, I'm just going to be to these 20 donors, and you lose one or two of those donors, you could be losing 10, 20% of your donations in a year. Yeah. And that's not going to work. So we try and diversify, and that's key. And in that, you have to be available to everybody.
Yeah. And let's talk on that, because I love, I love the whole concept of being available to everybody. And then there's different ways of giving. There's giving dollars, and then there's giving of your time. And some people give one of those, some people give both of those. How I feel it seems to me that less people are willing to give up their time these days. And so how does the Jewish Federation pull people in, I'm talking volunteers right now, to give of their time to help grow the cause? And this is, I think, applicable to not just the Jewish Federation, but any nonprofit that I think is struggling with this.
I think you're spot on, and it's something people don't like to talk about. And there's not a right or wrong way to give. People can give of their time, they can give of their money, they can give of their expertise. You know, it could be just a phone call, like, hey, I have a question. You know, help me out in this business thing. You know, don't be afraid to ask people for help. People want to volunteer, but people don't have time. You know, people ask me all the time, what's your most scarce resource? Sure, we all want more money. I mean, let's be honest.
Right.
But the most finite resource I have currently in my life is time. I can't manufacture more. I know it's contrite. I can't manufacture 25 hours in a day. There are only so many hours in the day, and you need to get it done. I think it's important that, you know, we use our volunteers' times wisely. I'd rather somebody not volunteer than volunteer and have a poor experience. I think that is worse. And so what I ask all of my staff, if you're going to ask somebody to volunteer, which we do, you know, on a daily basis, this isn't a rarity, it's make sure, are you ready for them? Do you know what you want for them? You know, it's sort of the A, B's, and C's. You know, what do you want from them? How long is it going to be? What are the outcomes that you're hoping for? And if you can't answer those questions before somebody comes in, don't have them come in, because I don't want them coming in and saying, oh, what do you want to do today?
Yeah. Yeah, so great.
I think as long as you can show that and people have a good experience, people are more than willing to help. That's what I find is, you know, everybody is so worried about, oh, people don't have time, they don't have money, they're not going to give. People will. You just need to meet them where they're at and make sure that they feel appreciated and useful. Yeah.
Let's talk about meeting people where they're at. I think, you know, messaging and marketing and really connecting emotionally with not only, you know, seasoned people who are part of, in this case, the Jewish Federation, but people who are new, who are coming out of college and getting involved. Mm-hmm. You know, how does the Federation look at marketing to connect emotionally with the people, so they say, hey, because I think the generations of today, the millennials, the Gen Zs, are looking for more emotional connection to see where they want to put their hearts before they put their dollars in. How are you adjusting to that?
I think that is the case, and I think that's the case for a couple of reasons. Not that people are more or less philanthropic, but I think you have to show me. We're going to show me,
right?
You know, time. You know, I'm not going to do things just because. And I think 40, 50, 60 years ago, people did things just because. They gave to nonprofits because it was what they did. And now it's, okay, why do you need this nonprofit? Why do you need the amount of money? Why are you doing this? And you have to sort of make the case and show what it is you're doing and why you're doing it and why it's important for them. You know, I would like to use this phrase when we fundraise. You know, I can give people good feelings and I can show them what they do, but I'm competing with, I'm not curing cancer and I don't have a football team. And I use that analogy, you know, somewhat in jest, but, you know, we're competing against hospitals and major universities, and there are people that need help. And I think the easiest way is to show that and show the people, you know, bring donors to people who are receiving help and let them volunteer, let them pass out food, let them take care of the senior for a day. And you need to make that emotional connection, you know. In addition to that, we live in a society where there are so many drains on people's resources and time.
Yeah.
You know, look at it. 30 years ago, there wasn't Netflix, there weren't cell phones, there weren't 1,000 TV channels. There were, you know, you got 247 or whatever you got. And now it's, you know, you're fighting for a smaller, the pie may be the same, but there's so many more people fighting for it, and you can't get drowned out. You got to make sure that you have a case that doesn't get lost in the giving.
Yeah. Well said. I love everything that you're talking about. I want to rewind a little bit, because even though we're sitting here July 22nd, you took over as CEO May of 2021.
Yes.
And 2 months ago, I think we were still wearing masks, right? I think the world was much scarier than it is right now, right? And so now we look and we see, you know, sporting events are packed, and, you know, I mean, it's people are vaccinated, but taking over really during the pandemic and having to make probably some very, you know, challenging decisions. How did you kind of bring everybody and all the components together?
So it's great. And I would actually say now may be a scarier time, not for health wise, but leadership wise. it was easy. A good leader knows when to say, I'm out. And basically why I say that is on March 13th, which I remember, it was a Wednesday, we had a board meeting of 2020. We had a board meeting at 8 o'clock. And I asked the head of all agencies to stay after. And I said, I don't know what we're up against here. I'm certainly not a prognosticator or an epidemiologist.
Are you talking about March 13th, 2020?
2020, yes.
Yeah.
And I said, but this is a bigger deal than what I think we realize. And I need everybody to be ready. And from that day on, we met every morning at 9 o'clock with all sorts of social service agencies in town to try and deal with it. And that was my sort of leadership style. Let's all get in the room. It doesn't matter who's funded or who's not funded or what you're doing. Are you providing a service for people in need in the Jewish people in Metro Detroit? And if you are, I want you on that call. And we made decisions. And I remember telling everybody, I'll make decisions for the community, but when you make decisions for your individual agency, make them with what you think is the best thing. And I say that in all seriousness because people were being asked to make a decision with not all the information, and they were making what I consider the best decision at that time, given the facts that they know. Sure, can we look back July 22nd, say 2021, we should have done this, we should have done that? Sure, that's hindsight. But a good leader is not afraid to say, this is the way we're going, and if we're wrong, we'll back up and go a different direction. And that's sort of my leadership style. I think that's why we excelled in during the pandemic. Is it's not time to sit here and say, woe is us. We still have people that we need to serve. We could go down in a lockdown, but we still have 800 seniors that needed food. We have, a couple hundred people, disadvantaged people that are depending on us on a day-to-day basis. So our operation really never shut down. We pivoted.
Yeah.
And we worked a lot from home, but we didn't have the luxury of shutting down. It's not like Subway or McDonald's, if they don't have help, okay, no sandwiches today. We're in charge of people's lives and taking care of them. We didn't have that ability. And so it was a rocky year, but it really was, it was a fun year. And I'm really proud of what our community did. And why I want to go back to what I originally said was, it's an interesting time and it's a hard time because should we all be in person? We still have people who aren't comfortable being in person. Should we be hybrid? Should we be all virtual? The hybrid is really the toughest one for all of our, sort of events and gatherings because it's how do you get both? It's not just, okay, we need to provide food or entertainment for something that's happening live, or virtual. Okay, we need the technological expertise to be able to pull this off so it doesn't look like a rinky-dink operation. And now you have both. And so I'd actually say that right now going in, although health-wise it doesn't look as scary, but operationally wise, there's still a lot of questions. And what this has taught us is we can only plan so far out in advance.
Yeah. Well said. No, I hear what you're saying. I loved how you talked about all of that. Stephen, tell everybody kind of in a nutshell what the Jewish Federation of Metropolitan Detroit does.
Sure. So we're what we call an umbrella agency. We're a nonprofit in Metro Detroit, overseeing 17 other nonprofits. And we do anything from schools to helping people with loans, to housing seniors, to helping disadvantaged people, helping people find jobs, sending kids to camp. And we do it here and we do it overseas and predominantly in Israel.
I love it. All right. You ready? Ready for a quick speed round, Stephen? All right. Finish this sentence. One thing every nonprofit who doesn't think like a business today needs to start doing is
understanding their numbers.
Okay. That's a good one. Best piece of wisdom you've ever received.
Again, going back to my grandfather, don't be afraid. You have to be able to do something if you're going to ask somebody else to do it.
Yeah, that's a good one. Mm-hmm. You are in a career that is so important and such a special position. As you fast forward 100 years, what do you want your legacy to be as the imprint that you made with the Jewish Federation?
So I'm going to answer that one because people ask me that all the time, and I have a canned answer. I just want it to be looked back as the community was a better place than when he found it. Because I don't want to say I want to do X, Y, and Z because I don't know what X, Y, and Z are going to be. And I don't know if X, Y, and Z are going to be needed in 20 years. Maybe, I could say I was the best blacksmith ever, but it doesn't matter now. Is the community in a better place than when I started?
I love it. If people want to give or learn more about Jewish Federation, Stephen, how can they connect?
It's jewishdetroit.org.
I love it. So just a couple things in closing I want to share. I think the work that you're doing, I've known you, I've known your family for a long, long time. Mm-hmm. The work that you're doing to me is the most soulful work. And somebody in your position is not only in alignment doing soul work, but you touch, like you said, 10,000 of your clients. I would say even more, way more than that. In the work that you do and the ripple effects of everything positively that you do, leading through the pandemic, leading through the next, as we move out of this pandemic. I am very grateful and appreciative that somebody like you is at the helm of the Jewish Federation. You're a great leader and a great inspiration for so many people. And thanks for all you do, because it's not a 40-hour-a-week job. It's doctor hours, and you're on call all the time to make sure that everybody that you represent is secure and safe and healthy. So I'm very grateful for not only your time, but everything that you do. Any final thoughts?
Yeah, I want to say two things. First of all, thank you for having me on. Thank you for all the kind words. But it's not just me; it's really a team. And I know that sounds contrite, but it's really the team that allows me to do this. And there are hundreds of people that work here at Federation and through our organizations that really make this a great community. And whether it's you're doing job A or job D, it doesn't matter. It's everybody on our team is making this world a better place. Yeah. And to me, that's the most important. And look, I want to thank my wife for allowing me to have that time to be interrupted at dinner or be interrupted at night when something happens, because you're right. It is a full-time job, and I'm always on.
Yeah. Well, I will share the thanks in all of those thanks, and humility is great. But thanks for all you do, Stephen. Think community. If Stephen can help you, or you want to learn more about the Jewish Federation, give them the website one more time.
jewishdetroit.org.
All right. Think community. Thanks so much, Stephen. Appreciate you, man. Thanks so much.
Thanks, John. Yep.